Let's talk about markups and markdowns. This is Unit 4, Part 3, end of the Unit 4 trilogy, where we all wrap it all up with some practice questions at the end, as well as a nice little formula summary that sort of gives you your whole mathematical toolbox that you'll need for this particular unit. Very exciting to see how this turns out. So when we think of markup, right, and we were talking about this at the beginning of Unit 4, and that selling price, it breaks down into a couple components. We need the direct costs related to this, as we talked about at the beginning of this unit, and then markup. And we recall from the beginning that markup needed to cover overhead expenses, which we'll call E, or indirect expenses, and some per unit profit, right? And we saw that intuitively in the beginning of this particular unit. If we don't cover all these three things, it's just a matter of how quickly we go bankrupt, whether we're on the express lane or whether we're leisurely going and marching towards our doom. Either way, we're going to lose if we're not covering all three of these items. Okay? So our selling price is going to be broken into these components. So we take that relationship, which it makes intuitive sense to us, and now we just express it mathematically. And so that selling price is really C plus E plus P. And that's just a mathematical representation of saying I got to cover my direct costs, my indirect costs, and I got to provide for a reasonable profit. Now, direct costs are off on its own. The other two comprise or compose or are the markup, right? Yeah, typically when we think of markup, we think of that amount we add to our direct costs to cover those things that aren't necessarily directly associated with that particular product. So markup now becomes E plus P. And when we substitute that the M equals E plus P into the original formula, selling price could also mean costs plus just the markup. Now, why this distinction? Sometimes we're just given a certain set of information that makes our determination of the selling price as being C plus E plus P. If we have all that info, we use that particular expression to find selling price. But sometimes we don't have a lot of detailed information on overhead expenses or indirect expenses and per unit profit. But we do have some markup information. And so then we sort of resort to the selling price is equal to C plus M. Okay? So again, which one of those we pick really depends on the information that's been provided to us. Now we have a rate of markup, so we got things related to selling price, so we sort of know what markup is. Yeah. But so we have rates, and there are two rates, and they're really, when you think about it, very intuitive when you consider them. You have markup on cost and markup on selling price. And we express both of those as percentages. So when you think of rate of markup on cost, well, markup must be in the numerator, on must be on top of, so cost must be in the denominator. So markup on cost is M over C times 100 to make it into a percentage. Woo, easy, right? Same kind of thinking with markup on selling price. Markup on selling price. Markup must be the numerator, selling price is the denominator, express it as a percentage, and boom, M divided by S times by 100, and I've got my markup on selling price, and again, expressed as a percentage. Okay? So for these, they make intuitive sense, and all these formulas sort of make intuitive or common sense, but if necessary, you could always resort to the mathematical toolbox, and you'll see that on the last two slides of this particular set. So let's do some simple example. And so we got the cost of electronic book reader. Take a sip of tea here. I don't know how the gurgle and the gulping translates into the audio. So the cost of an electronic book reader to the retailer is $50. Can be sold for $80. So what's our markup? The difference, right? I paid $50 for it. I sold it for $80. The rest of it, the $30, that's my markup. How do I find my markup on costs? 30 divided by the 50 being our costs. Express it as a percentage, I get 60%. Markup on selling price, right? I take that exact markup amount. Again, that's just the selling price minus the cost. That's all we did. We rearranged one of those formulas, right? And we just flowed with it, right? And 30 divided by 80 times by 100, express that as a percentage, and I get 37.5%. Not super complicated stuff. We just have to know who is who. It's organization. Right? We keep things organized. As long as we keep things organized, we sort of have identifiers that this is who this number represents. This is what that number represents. We sort of know what all the numbers represent. After that, it's plugging stuff into really, really simple formulas. Okay, so now let's do some practice questions and see how this all works out for us. Leaping into question number 1. Lodgepole pine trees were purchased for $3.50 less a couple of discounts. Oh, some early Unit 4 stuff. Very fun. So we get a couple of discounts. Getting discounts is always fun. So first discount is 40%, and then we get a second discount of 25%. Then we turned around. We sold these things for $3.29. So a couple of things. We want our markup as a percentage of cost. So let's kind of look at question 1. We got markup on cost expressed as a percent, and that is really what we want. First thing we need to do is we need to know what the markup is. Second thing is we need to know what the costs are. So let's start with costs first. Our cost is like the net price. It's how much we, as the seller, that's how much we pay. So cost and net price, they're the same to us. Right? So how much we actually pay. Net price is how much is actually paid. And we had a nice little formula for that, and that was the list price. And then, of course, in this case, we have 2 discounts that we're going to apply. So here, what was that net price? Well, it was $3.50. Sold it for a couple of discounts. The first one, 0.4. The second one, 1 minus 0.25. And we work through that math, and we get $1.58, but I'll call it 1.575. Okay, so I got my cost. I remember from early on that if I take the selling price and I minus the cost, I get the markup. Remember, selling price equal to cost plus M. Right? And I just rearranged that a little bit to get what the markup is. So I take the information that I have here. So I have a selling price of $3.29. I subtract from it my costs, right? And that gets me my markup, which is $1.72, or I'll call it a 1.715. After that, I go back to the original formula for markup on selling price, and I bring this all together. And I've got 1.715 divided by 1.575. I'm going to express that as a percentage so that a wide audience can really understand what's going on. And essentially I get 108.9%, or roughly 109% markup on cost. Okay. Next step, part B. And what do I have? We want markup on selling price. So I go into my statistical toolbox, or I remember intuitively it's markup on selling price, markup the numerator, selling price the denominator, and expressed as a percentage. I have my markup from the first question. It didn't change. So I got 1.715. Selling price, which I had from the question, 3.29. Express that as a percentage. And so all I'm doing is just bringing all this stuff together, and I get 52.13%, or roughly 52%. That's it. So very much a kind of a plug-and-play kind of environment where we're finding these markup rates. All right, let's kind of roll over to question number 2 here. Ultimate Ski purchased gloves for $80.28 per pair. Now, no extra discounts on that. $80.28 is what we paid. So C is 80.28. Okay. Gloves are marked up 48% of the selling price. Now, if we remember back to our early days in Unit 2 and we were doing a review of algebra, remember that of is like multiplying. So when it says the gloves are marked up, that's M, and you say it's 48%, which we express as a proportion, 0.48, of the selling price, means we are multiplying them by the selling price, which we have come to know to be S. Okay, so we have a relationship. We don't have a particular number for markup, but we have a relationship that describes markup. Almost as good. Part A. For how much does Ultimate Ski sell a pair of gloves? Okay, so we kind of roll back maybe a little bit and look at our formulas for selling price. Right? I have the first one, C plus E plus P. That requires me to have specific information on indirect costs and per unit profits. I look at the question. Do I see any of that there? No. So I go back. I go to my second formula for selling price, and I see C plus M. Do I have markup information? Yeah, I do. Right? Hey, 48% of the selling price. Got it. So selling price is going to be the cost plus markup. Let's go back to our question. Continue working along. So we get our selling price is our cost of 80.28 plus 0.48 times by S. Hey, yeah, I know I got unknowns on both sides of the equation. Not a big deal because I only have one unknown. And we remember from our previous experience, one unknown, one equation, one solution. All right. So I'm just going to rearrange things a little bit. I'm going to take the 0.48, bring it over to the left-hand side. Just remember there's sort of an implied 1 in front of that S. And so I'm going to have S minus 0.48S equals to 80.28. 0.52S equals to 80.28. And ultimately S equals to $154.38. Okay. Solid, right? Taking some of the algebra we had in Unit 2, incorporating it into a Unit 4 problem. And that's where you'll typically see and use those skills from Unit 1 and Unit 2. It's not that you'll answer questions about them per se, at least if you're worried about an exam point of view, but we will need those tools to answer questions in other units, right? Whether we're doing trade discounts, cash discounts, and markups and markdowns here, or whether you're doing simple interest, compound interest, etc. later on. Okay, so we've got that taken care of. And now the next part of the question asks us, what is the rate of markup based on cost? So we know our markup based on cost. We got that formula. We either remember it, because it sort of makes sense, or we look in our mathematical toolbox for it. And so we see our markup. And I'm just going to kind of do it the old-fashioned way right from the beginning. 0.48 times by the selling price. So I just put the relationship in there. Divided by 80.28. At this point, I've already figured out what the selling price is, right? So I got 0.48 times by that selling price of $154.38, all divided by 80.28, and I will express that as a percent. Okay? And ultimately, I do all the math in that, and I get a 92.3%. All nicely solid. So this unit is kind of nice in the sense that things are broken down into their components, and there is an established process for each and every one of these things. So we'll conclude this Unit 4, Part 3, end of the trilogy, on a downer. Markdowns. Ooh. Markups are fun. Markdowns, sometimes necessary, but much less fun. Okay? So sometimes we are called upon to reduce our prices for a whole bunch of reasons. Stock has become obsolete. New models are available. We need to make certain sales quotas, so things have to be moved out. And, it's necessary, right? You can't necessarily sell everything at your full selling price. You try to sell as much as you can at the full selling price, but recognize that at the end of it, you may have to liquidate or reduce the price on your inventory. Right, and it makes sense, right? If you've taken the Econ 101, a little bit of microeconomics, you sort of know the downward sloping demand curve, and you try to sell to as many people as you can at your selling price. But if there's just not enough customers there, you may have to reduce the price to slide down that demand curve to sort of appeal to a customer at a different price point. Okay. And there are variabilities in demand. Bills are constant typically. Sales can be a little bit more variable. And so perhaps for whatever reason, COVID, sales are lower than you expected, and you end up with a little extra inventory and you have to liquidate it. Or if you're starting to think ahead to your operations management experience, you don't want to run out. So you order a little extra. Well, when you order a little extra, sometimes what happens is you got a little extra. And then you may need to mark that down because you don't want to keep it in inventory and tie up your working capital any longer than is necessary. So a lot of reasons for markdowns, and pretty good business reasons at that. So nevertheless, we're reducing the price, and we're coming up with a reduced price or a sale price. Markdown is nothing more than a discount, right? It's less fun. Like, we like getting discounts, but now we're starting to give a discount to our customers. So before, we've been extracting these discounts from the folks that we buy from. That was fun. Now our customers are extracting it from us. Not so much fun, right? But essentially a markdown is just a discount, but it's now kind of a discount in reverse. It's applied to us. Instead of us getting it, we're giving it. So in essence, the math breaks down to be the same. And you can kind of see that at that very last box there. And you look at the markdown rate. Note the markdown rate always is on the selling price. Okay? And note not just any selling price, but the regular selling price. Now, we could have a whole bunch of markdowns going on here, and we could have a bunch of sales prices, and all those selling prices really start to get all mixed up. Unit 4, not a hard unit, but remember, we got to keep things organized. We got to remember who is who. Keep those identifiers sorted. Once we do that, the formulas are pretty straightforward. There's no tricks in the formulas. So we note that markdown rate is markdown on or divided by the regular selling price. The regular selling price. Let me say that one more time. Markdown, it's on the regular selling price. Okay? And we express it as a percentage as we've been expressing our rate so far. Okay? That sale price is just that regular selling price, and we apply a discount to it. Right? So we are using the formula from part 1, right? So it's kind of like we're doing the retrospective, going back into the past. remembering those wonderful Part 1 days. And we just pull that discount formula from Part 1. Right? So markdown, nothing special, but we just need to keep a special attention to how that markdown rate's calculated. So for instance, let's do a little simple calculation here. We have a bicycle. It's originally priced at $179, and we sold it for $129. The amount of the discount, right, our markdown, how much did it go down? Remember we talked about amount of discount, Part 1? Right? It's no different here, right? I got my original selling price, which is like L. I have my sales selling price, the amount I actually get, which is like N. And if I go L minus N, I get the amount of the discount. The amount of the discount is exactly the same, conceptually and mathematically, as the amount of the markdown. So to find the markdown rate, I take that amount of the discount or the amount of the markdown. They're the same thing here. And I divide it by the original selling price, or the regular selling price of $179, times it by 100 to make it a percentage, and I get 27.93%, or about 28%. So nothing complicated. You look at the math and you go, okay, no big deal. But we got to remember, like it's been the case throughout this whole unit, right? Sometimes when we think concepts of L and N, list price and net price, those are straightforward. The formula is not too bad to look at. However, they represent they can be used in a whole host of situations. So that's the challenge, is to kind of understand it, so that when you're faced with new situations, you sort of understand what the relationships are. Again, all about understanding how things relate. The math is really, works itself out, and it's not a huge complexity. Question number 1. A 7-day spa vacation in Sunnybrook was advertised at a price of $799 per person based on double occupancy. If the vacation was booked 2 months in advance, the price would be lowered to $685 per person. What rate of markdown has been offered? Gosh, you know what? You could have easily said what was the rate, what was the amount of discount or rate of discount. Right? It's just exactly the same kind of question. The information is the same. It's just that one word, but really mathematically, it's the same. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same. Don't make it complicated, please. So the list price, the original price, is like $799. The price we actually are going to pay is $685. And really what we want to determine is the rate of discount, D. But we're going to express that as a percentage. Okay, so we're going to want the markdown on selling price times by 100%. So working this out long form, markdown is like the amount of the discount, which is L minus the N, which we then work out to be $799 minus $685. That gives us $114. So our markdown is $114. So let's plug this in, 114 divided by 799, and then we're going to express that as a percent. And so we get about 14.26, round up for 14.27%. Okay. Hey, you could have done it using the discount formula. Okay, found D, expressed D as a percentage. Would have got you the same place. Okay, I just used the formula that was part of this part of the unit, but you could have used the discount formula, ran with it that way as well. Got you exactly the same answer. I worked it out twice. I got the same answer. Okay, let's talk about question number 2 now. What do we have here? Amazing Aways Company sells sightseeing tours of the Kootenay Plains Ecological Reserve. Whew, hey, it's in BC. Yay. In Canada. Can't travel anywhere. I'm so sad. Anyway, I digress. And it sells these things for $3,849. So sales price $3,849. Overhead expenses are 31% of cost. Target profit is 17% of cost. So like we had in a previous question, we don't have numbers for E and we don't have numbers for P, but we do understand the relationships. So E is equal to 0.31 times by cost, and profit equals to 0.17, again, times by cost. How much does Amazing Aways pay for the tours? So how much do we pay for that? Which means we are looking for our cost. So now we think of, okay, what's the appropriate question here? I'm just going to flow a different way. So I go back, whoops. Hate when that happens. Go back to my mathematical toolbox, which is the last two slides. And I see, okay, so I'm looking for sales price and I'm floating there. And I see I have a selling price, a C plus E plus P. Does that work here? Do I have S and C information? I don't, but you know, I could look for it. I have E, I have P, I have those relationships all expressed in C. So I know everything depends on C, and I have a selling price. So I can use that to solve for C. That is great. Let's go back up to this original slide. So I'm going to use the S equals to C plus E plus P formula because I got all that information. 3849 equals to C plus E, which is 0.31 C. Right? Starting to see how those important basic algebra skills that we were talking about in Unit 1 and Unit 2 are built in here. Plus 0.17 C. I gather up all the C's, recognizing that there's a 1 in front of the first C. And so I have 3849 equals to 1.48 of those C's. 1 plus 0.31 plus 0.17. Isolate C by dividing both sides by 1.48, and I get $2,600.68. So that takes care of my E. That's how much it's costing us. Right? We're going to sell these tours for $3,849, costing us a little over $2,600 for them. B. What is B? B. What is the lowest price they can offer while covering all the costs and expenses? So essentially what we're talking about is a special type of price, selling price, such that we cover the costs and plus the indirect expenses. Is often just referred to as the expenses. This is a special type of price called the break even. So I'm just going to give it a little subscript BE for break even. So that sales price, break even, is our cost, which is the $2,600.68, plus our, sorry, that's my bad. Should have wrote E, not M. Bad Alan. Okay. 0.31 times by the cost, $2,600.68. And now we just add it all up. And we get a sales price break even of $3,400.06 and 89 cents. Sorry, $3,406.89. And the very last one is C. What is the highest rate of markdown at which the company will still break even? So we're looking for markdown, rate of markdown, and that's always on the selling price, not the break-even selling price, and then times by 100%. Okay. So what does that markdown represent? Okay. So this is a nice involved explanation. The sales break even, if I just move over here, is costs plus expenses. The sales normally is costs plus expenses plus profit. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can do this mathematically, or you can sing your Sesame Street song. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. Da, da, da. I can't remember how the rest of it goes, right? But what's different about those two formulas? P. I can go through and do the S minus SB and do all the math, and I'll come up with P because the C and the E's cancel out. So that's the markdown. It's the thing that's not like the others. P. So the markdown, when you're talking about break even, the amount is just however much that per unit profit was. Okay. Nice special case there. So we can then calculate this as being P, which is 0.17 times by the cost, right, of $2,600.68, divided by the original selling price of $3,849. We express that as a percentage, and bada boom, bada bang, we've got our answer. And 11.49%. Okay, so that's the amount we can mark this down and still at least break even. And that concludes the markdown practice questions. There's a couple awesome unit practice questions on these set of slides, and I will post those onto as a quiz, which will be coming up right away.